You need to know this. The United States Post Office is on the verge of shutting down. According to the New York Times today, the Post Office is quickly running out of cash and may be forced to shut down this winter. As the Times writes, sometime early next year, the agency will run out of money to pay its employees and gas up its trucks, forcing it to stop delivering the roughly 3 billion pieces of mail it handles weekly. Postmaster General Patrick R. Donahoe described the situation as extremely serious and warned, if Congress doesn't act, we will default. So what's going on here? Why is the Post Office, which was created by Ben Franklin more than 200 years ago, on the verge of shuttering its doors today? While the media's storyline is that the Post Office is dealing with the problem of trying to remain profitable in a world of decreasing paper mail, the real cause is actually something much, much different. Consider that this year, like every year since 2006, the Post Office is legally required to make a $5 billion annual contribution to a retirement account to pay for future retirees who are not yet even born. No other company or government agency has been asked to do anything this crazy. Yet that's exactly what Congress, during the presidency of George W. Bush, forced the Post Office to do. And now this poison pill legislation from 5 years ago has pushed the Post Office to the verge of not being able to pay its bills. So is this really just another example of conservatives manufacturing a crisis so that they can privatize another essential government service? For more on this, I'm joined by Chuck Zlatkin, Legislative and Political Director of the New York Metro Area Postal Union. Chuck, welcome.
Hello, Tom, and thank you for having me on your program.
Thanks for joining us. Is it true that under this piece of legislation that was passed by a voice vote in Congress, we don't even have a record of who voted how, other than that, it was a voice vote, Republicans running the show, that 75 years of retirement funding by the Post Office has to be paid off in a 10-year period? Do I have that right?
That is correct, but it really has to do with just one portion of retirement benefits. It's the health care benefits for future retirees that this legislation, as you aptly put, require the Postal Service to fully fund it within a 10-year period, which means that the Postal Service is $5.5 billion, in the hole before it sells one stamp each year. But as outrageous as this is, it's not all of what's been done to the Postal Service by congressional mandates.
Now, the guy who wrote this legislation, Tom Davis, UPS is one of his major lifetime donors. Tom DeLay, the floor whip, UPS is one of his major lifetime donors, one of his top 4 donors, as I recall. Denny Hastert, Speaker of the House at the time, they were one of his top 15 donors, as I recall, or in the top 20. Might that have something to do with this Postal Accountability Enhancement Act? Or was this just, ideology? Let's just take down the Post Office. Or was there some actual legitimate reason to do this?
Well, I think the long-term goal of many people involved with the planning of this has been to eventually privatize the Postal Service, because they know that's an essential service even in the internet era, and that what irked them is that the Postal Service has 600,000 workers who are gaining a living wage and benefits in retirement. They're unionized workers, and postal management is carrying out the wishes of people who say, wait a minute, if we get rid of these unions and the unionized workers, we can replace them with at-will workers, hourly wage workers with no benefits, and not that that money would go to the government or the people in the United States. It would go to to profiteers, because
to the CEOs.
We all have to.
So I'm going to end up with a situation where the checks that I might get in the mail, whether they're current business deals or future retirement checks, are being delivered by a guy who's working a pizza job in the evening to supplement his income?
Right, and one thing that's true about postal workers, because I know, because I've gone through it, is we are vetted. I mean, getting a job in the Postal Service is something that it really requires someone with a good background. I don't think Darrell Issa could qualify for a job.
Right, and Darrell Issa is one of the guys who's pushing for one of these things to nail this thing down. I'm sorry to move us along. We just have about a minute and a half left, Chuck, and I want to get as much in as possible. How come the New York Times didn't include this information in their article today? Well,
they either buried it or wanted to mislead it, because the New York Times is carrying out the message. They didn't talk about H.R. 1351, which is Stephen Lynch's legislation that has 183 co-sponsors that would basically solve this problem. It would take the overpayment into the retirement fund and move it into the obligation for the future retirees' health benefits. It wouldn't cost the taxpayers anything, and it would basically free up $5.5 billion a year for the Postal Service to do its job, which is to protect universal service for everybody who needs it, and to deliver the mail that it's been doing for 236 years.
And in fact is the only institution that is actually defined in the Constitution. So this is a problem that has a solution. The solution is in legislation. The legislation is in the House. I'm guessing that the Republicans are not going to be real enthusiastic about passing this, and they're going to try and push this until 2013. We have about 20 seconds left, Chuck.
Well, we just need people to call their representatives and ask them to co-sponsor H.R. 1351 and thank them if they already had. There's bipartisan support for this legislation. It's the answer. The Postal Service will be fine, and then we can go on to taking care of the real problems that have to be dealt with, not the manufactured ones.
Thank you very much, Chuck. Appreciate it. Appreciate your dropping by.
Thank you, Tom.
If you want to save the United States Postal Service that's as old as America itself, as Chuck said, you need to call your congressman or woman and tell him or her to stop the right-wing assault on the Postal Service part of our comments.